The ink from Maya Chen's pen bleeds slightly into the cheap receipt paper as her hand trembles, forming letters that could either save a life or end her own. Her fingers grip the ballpoint with white-knuckled intensity as she writes a single word across the bottom of the check. Bomb. The Friday lunch rush at Vincenzo's pulses around her like a living organism. Silverware clinks against fine china. Conversations layer over each other in a symphony of normalcy, and the espresso machine hisses steam in rhythmic intervals. Nobody notices the 26-year-old waitress whose world has just tilted sideways, whose routine Friday has transformed into something that tastes like copper and fear. Maya has worked at this restaurant for 18 months, serving overpriced pasta to Manhattan's elite, while her own dinner usually consists of day-old bread and whatever the kitchen staff doesn't finish. The tips are good enough to keep her studio apartment in Queens, good enough to send money home to her mother in Chinatown, good enough to make the double shifts and aching feet worth enduring. But one customer has carved himself into her consciousness with surgical precision, appearing every Friday at exactly 1:15 to occupy table 12 by the window. The corner booth with sightlines to both entrances and the kitchen. The table nobody else requests, because something about it feels dangerous, like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. Dominic Valentino wears power the way other men wear cologne, invisible but unmistakable, changing the atmosphere of any room he enters. His suits cost more than Maya's annual rent, hand-tailored in charcoal and midnight blue, always paired with watches that could fund a college education. His dark hair shows distinguished silver at the temples, and his eyes, the color of aged whiskey, miss nothing. She'd learned his name from the credit card he'd used once 6 months ago when the payment system crashed. Dominic Valentino. The name had sent ice through her veins even then, belonging to someone whose photograph appeared in business sections alongside headlines about real estate empires and charitable foundations. The legitimate face of something far less legitimate. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Maya glances at the clock mounted above the bar. 1:47. In exactly 3 minutes, she'll deliver his check with the word that could detonate her entire existence. The paper feels hot in her palm, the ink still wet. The decision already made. The catalyst sits 3 tables away, nursing an espresso he ordered 20 minutes ago but hasn't touched. The man in the navy blazer whose normality screams wrongness to anyone trained to notice details. Maya notices details the way some people notice weather. Constantly, automatically, essential to survival. His right hand never leaves his lap. His eyes track Dominic's every movement through the reflection in the window glass. The condensation ring from his untouched espresso has spread into a small puddle on the white tablecloth, and sweat beads along his hairline despite Vincenzo's aggressive air conditioning. But it's what she saw 5 minutes ago that made her hand reach for her order pad, that made her pen move across paper without conscious thought. The man's phone screen tilted just wrong as he checked it, displaying a timer counting down. 17 minutes remaining when she glimpsed it. 12 minutes now. And the way his gaze had drifted, just once, to the underside of Dominic Valentino's chair. Maya processes this information with the calculated calm of someone who's survived worse than most people imagine. Her childhood in the margins of Chinatown taught her to recognize danger in its infinite. Maya processes this information with calculated calm. Her childhood taught her to recognize danger in all its forms. Her mother's boyfriend had worn that same expression the night Maya was 14, right before her mother's screams brought neighbors and police sirens. The night Maya learned that sometimes you intervene, or you live with silence forever. She learned to waitress at 16, lying about her age, sending money home while her mother recovered in a hospital bed with a jaw wired shut. She learned that watching carefully keeps you alive, that patterns reveal truth, that most people are too absorbed in their own narratives to notice the danger circling in their periphery. Dominic Valentino notices everything, which is why what happens next will either save him or condemn them both. Maya smooths her black apron, checks that her dark hair remains secured in its professional bun, and approaches table 12 with the practiced smile that's carried her through 18 months of demanding customers and inadequate tips. The check sits in the leather folder, her handwritten warning visible only to whoever opens it. Dominic looks up as she approaches, and for the first time in 18 months of Fridays, something flickers across his usually impassive features. Recognition, perhaps, or awareness of the fear she can't quite hide, despite years of practice at hiding everything. "Your check, Mr. Valentino," Maya says, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She places the leather folder on the table with deliberate care, her eyes holding his for a fraction longer than professional service requires. Then she does something that breaks every rule of customer service, every boundary between server and served. Her lips move silently, forming words without sound, trusting that he's spent enough Fridays watching her to read the message. "Under your chair." Dominic's expression doesn't change, but his hand stills halfway to the folder. His gaze sharpens, really seeing her for perhaps the first time, measuring the fear and determination warring in her dark eyes. Opens the folder with movements that betray nothing, his eyes dropping to the receipt where her pen has transformed mundane transaction into desperate warning. Baum stares up at him in blue ink that's still slightly wet, smudging under his thumb as he processes the impossible, the unthinkable, the very real threat she's placed in his hands. Maya's breath catches as she watches the information register. Most people would panic, would react visibly, would scan the restaurant for threats. Dominic Valentino does none of these things. Instead, he carefully folds the receipt, slips it into his jacket pocket, and places $300 bills in the folder, 10 times what his meal cost. "Thank you, Maya," he says quietly, using her name for the first time in 18 months. "Your service has been exceptional today." The words carry weight beyond their surface meaning, acknowledgement and question combined. Then he stands with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to controlling every movement, his hand reaching into his jacket for his phone as he walks, not toward the exits, but toward the restrooms near the kitchen corridor. Maya's hands shake as she clears the neighboring table, her movements automatic while her mind catalogs the unfolding crisis. The man in the navy blazer has noticed Dominic's departure, his posture shifting from watchful to alert. His hand moves to his lap, to his phone, to the timer that's still counting down. 8 minutes remaining. Maybe less. The restaurant's ambient noise suddenly feels too loud, every laugh and conversation a backdrop to potential catastrophe. Maya counts heads automatically. 43 customers, 6 staff members visible in the dining room, unknown numbers in the kitchen. 43 lives that could end because someone decided Dominic Valentino needed to die today. She thinks of her mother, waiting in their small Chinatown apartment for Maya's weekly visit tomorrow. She thinks of her younger brother, just accepted to NYU, dependent on her financial support. She thinks of all the reasons she should have kept silent, should have looked away, should have chosen self-preservation over intervention. But looking away isn't who Maya Chen is, even when looking directly at danger could get you killed. Dominic emerges from the corridor exactly 90 seconds later, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression revealing nothing as he speaks in rapid Italian too quiet for Maya to catch. He moves through the dining room with purposeful calm, stopping briefly at the host stand to speak with Vincent, the owner, whose face shifts from genial to alarmed in the space of a heartbeat. Within 2 minutes, Vincent is making announcements about a gas leak, his voice apologetic but firm as he ushers guests toward exits with practiced efficiency. Complimentary meals, future reservations, profuse apologies that disguise the real reason for evacuation. The man in the navy blazer stands abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood with a sound like a scream. His hand reaches for his phone, fingers moving with the frantic speed of someone whose careful plan is disintegrating. But Dominic's attention has already shifted to him, locked on with predatory focus that freezes the man mid-movement. Two men in dark suits materialize from nowhere, or perhaps they'd been there all along, invisible until needed. They flank the navy blazer, their movements coordinated and efficient. Voices too low for diners to hear as they escort him toward the kitchen entrance rather than the main exits. Maya watches through the organized chaos of evacuation, her body moving on autopilot as she helps elderly customers gather belongings and guides confused tourists toward 47th Street. The dining room empties in waves, staff and customers flowing outward while something darker flows inward, invisible to those who don't know how to see it. Dominic stands near the bar, phone still pressed to his ear, his eyes tracking the evacuation with the precision of someone conducting an orchestra. His gaze finds Maya across the emptying restaurant, holds her captive in whiskey-colored assessment that feels like being X-rayed, examined at a cellular level for threat or value or something she can't yet name. Then he gestures, small, economical, unmistakable. Stay. Maya's feet root to the floor as the last customers file out, as the kitchen staff evacuates through back exits, as Vincent locks the front doors with hands that shake despite his decades of restaurant management. Only then does Dominic cross the dining room toward her, each step measured and deliberate, closing distance that feels both protective and predatory. You saw him, Dominic says, statement rather than question. Noticed what everyone else missed despite staring directly at it. His hand, Maya answers, her voice steadier than her racing heart. Never moved from his lap, never touched his espresso, and the way he watched you in the window reflection, that's not how normal customers watch anyone. And the bomb? Dominic asks, stopping close enough that Maya can smell his cologne, expensive, subtle, with undertones of something darker. Gunpowder, perhaps, or simply the scent of violence barely contained. I saw his phone when he checked it. A timer. 17 minutes then, and he looked at your chair. Under it, specifically. The math wasn't difficult. Dominic's expression shifts minutely, something like respect warming his cold features. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Fewer would have risked themselves to warn a stranger. You're not a stranger, Maya counters, surprising herself with her boldness. You're a regular customer who tips well and never complains. That's more than most people do for service staff. The ghost of a smile touches Dominic's mouth, there and gone like lightning. I suspect you know I'm considerably more than a regular customer, Maya Chen. The use of her full name sends ice through her veins. He's researched her, knows her, has probably learned everything about her life that can be learned from background checks and surveillance. The thought should terrify her. Instead, it clarifies something she'd suspected since the moment she wrote that warning. The bomb squad is 2 minutes out, Dominic continues, his phone buzzing with constant updates. As is NYPD, fire department, and enough federal agencies to make this a jurisdictional nightmare. The man you identified is currently being questioned by my security team in a location that doesn't officially exist. Maya processes this information, her criminal justice courses from community college suddenly feeling inadequate for the reality unfolding around her. Will they find the device? The bomb? They will, Dominic confirms, his certainty absolute. Because you gave us time to evacuate, time to secure the threat, time to prevent what would have killed 43 people and made excellent primetime news coverage. The number matches her exact count, confirming what she suspected. Dominic Valentino had been counting too, calculating casualties, measuring the cost of someone's assassination attempt in innocent lives. Who was he? Maya asks, then immediately regrets the question as Dominic's expression hardens into something frightening. Someone who made poor career choices and poorer alliances, Dominic answers, his tone suggesting the questioning happening in that non-existent location won't be pleasant. Someone whose employer will learn that attacking me in public spaces carries consequences they're unprepared to face. Sirens wail in the distance, growing closer, the cavalry arriving too late to prevent disaster, but in time to secure the aftermath. Dominic moves to the window, watching the street fill with emergency vehicles, his posture relaxed despite coordinating what amounts to a counterterrorism operation. You should leave before they start taking statements, he says without turning. Through the kitchen, out the service alley. My driver is waiting in a black Mercedes. He'll take you anywhere you need to go. And then what? Maya asks, understanding that this conversation is really about what comes next, about the consequences of her intervention. Do I come back to work on Monday and pretend this never happened? Serve lunch rushes while knowing someone tried to kill you in my section? Dominic turns from the window, and the full weight of his attention settles on Maya like a physical touch. You don't work here anymore, he says quietly. Vincent will process your resignation, effective immediately, citing personal reasons. Your employee file will show you left on good terms with excellent references. The words should anger her. Another decision made without her input, another aspect of her life controlled by forces beyond her influence. Instead, Maya feels something close to relief mixed with terror. The restaurant had been safety, routine, predictability. It had also been a cage she'd never quite acknowledged. Because I'm a liability now, she states, understanding the calculation behind his words. Whoever sent that bomber knows I warned you, knows I'm the reason their attempt failed. You're a liability they'll try to eliminate, Dominic corrects, his bluntness almost refreshing after years of people dancing around uncomfortable truths. Which is why my driver will take you to a secure location, why you'll stay there until I've addressed the threat, and why we need to have a much longer conversation about what happens next. Maya's phone buzzes in her apron pocket. Her mother, probably, wondering why she hasn't called today. Her brother, maybe, needing money for textbooks. The ordinary concerns of her ordinary life, suddenly feeling impossibly distant from the reality she's stepped into. I saved your life with one word on a receipt, Maya says, her voice gaining strength with each syllable. And you're repaying that by taking away my job, my routine, my choices. How is that protection and not just another form of control? Dominic moves closer, close enough that Maya has to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Because in my world, Maya, protection and control are the same thing. I can't keep you safe if I don't know where you are, who you're talking to, what threats are circling. You chose to involve yourself in my life the moment you wrote that warning. Now we both live with the consequences. The kitchen door crashes open, Vincent bursting through with wild eyes and hands that gesture frantically. They found it. Bomb squad found the device under your chair, C4, enough to level half the block. They're evacuating surrounding buildings now. The confirmation settles over them like snow, cold and absolute. Maya's warning had been accurate. Her intervention had saved lives. And now those lives include her own, whether she wants that responsibility or not. Go with my driver, Dominic says, his tone softening fractionally. We'll talk tonight after I've cleaned up this mess. After I've sent appropriate messages to the people who thought they could kill me in broad daylight. Maya nods, understanding that agreement isn't really agreement when survival is the only alternative. She moves toward the kitchen, toward the service alley and the black Mercedes waiting like a portal to another existence. At the threshold, she turns back to find Dominic still watching her, his expression unreadable. You never asked why I did it, she says. Why I risked myself to warn you. I know why, Dominic replies, something almost gentle in his voice. You did it for the same reason I'm protecting you now. Because some lines, once crossed, define who we are. You're not someone who looks away when people need help. I'm not someone who abandons debts. The Mercedes smells like leather and expensive cologne, the driver silent as he navigates through streets clogged with emergency vehicles. Maya watches Vincenzo's disappear in the side mirror, watches her old life recede with every block traveled, and wonders if she'll ever feel normal again. Her phone buzzes constantly. Mother, brother, fellow waitresses asking about the evacuation. Maya silences them all, unable to explain what she doesn't yet understand herself. The driver takes turns that suggest counter-surveillance training, doubling back and changing routes with practiced efficiency. They cross into Queens, then Brooklyn, then somewhere Maya doesn't recognize. Upscale neighborhoods with tree-lined streets and brownstones that cost millions. The Mercedes pulls into an underground garage beneath a building that screams discreet wealth, and the driver finally speaks. Fourth floor, apartment 4C. Everything you need is already there. Mr. Valentino will arrive around 8 o'clock. Maya steps out into the garage, her waitress uniform feeling absurdly out of place amid the luxury vehicles parked in assigned spots. The elevator requires a key card the driver provides, ascending smoothly to the fourth floor where only two doors face each other across thick carpeting. Apartment 4C opens to reveal a space larger than any home Maya's ever inhabited. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer views of the Manhattan skyline, and furniture that looks like it belongs in design magazines fills the open floor plan. The kitchen could cater a restaurant. The bedroom features a bed big enough for 4 people. A note on the granite counter reads simply, "Make yourself comfortable. Order anything you need." Number is programmed as concierge. Maya sinks onto the leather sofa, her body finally registering the adrenaline crash that follows crisis. Her hands shake as she pulls out her phone, staring at the missed calls and texts from her old life, from the person she was 6 hours ago when her biggest worry was whether she'd make rent and still send money home. That person feels impossibly distant now, separated from current Maya by a single word written on a receipt. Bomb. One word that changed everything. Maya wakes to the sound of a key turning in the lock, her body jolting upright on the sofa where exhaustion had finally claimed her sometime after sunset. The apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows frame a Manhattan skyline transformed by darkness, millions of lights creating constellations that never sleep. Her phone shows 8:07, and the silhouette entering through the door belongs to Dominic Valentino. He's shed the suit jacket, his white dress shirt rolled to the elbows in a gesture that feels more dangerous than casual. There's blood on his collar. Not much, just a small spatter that catches the recessed lighting as he closes the door behind him. His tie is gone, top button undone, and his usually immaculate hair shows signs of being raked through with frustrated fingers. "You didn't order dinner," Dominic observes, his gaze sweeping the apartment to catalog what's changed since he left her here. The concierge service includes restaurants that will deliver anything you want within the hour. "I wasn't hungry," Maya replies, which is true despite the fact that she hasn't eaten since her shift breakfast at 6 this morning. Fear has a way of consuming appetite, replacing it with something that tastes like copper and uncertainty. Dominic moves to the kitchen, extracting a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet that reveals itself to be fully stocked, despite this apartment's appearance of rarely being used. He pours 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler, then pauses, glancing back at Maya with eyebrows raised in question. "I don't drink," she says, then reconsiders as the day's events crash over her in waves. "Actually, tonight I do." He pours a second glass, lighter than his own, and crosses to the sofa where Maya still sits with her legs tucked beneath her, wrinkled uniform a stark contrast to the apartment's pristine elegance. Dominic hands her the whiskey and settles into the adjacent armchair, maintaining distance that feels both respectful and calculated. The device was sophisticated. He begins without preamble, understanding perhaps that Maya needs information more than comfort. Military-grade C4, remotely detonated via cell phone trigger. The bomber you identified was a contractor, hired specifically because he had no previous connection to my organization or my enemies. Maya sips the whiskey, the burn welcome against the numbness trying to settle over her consciousness, which means whoever hired him is smart enough to use cutouts, to maintain distance between themselves and the actual attempt. Dominic's expression shifts slightly, approval warming features that usually remain carefully neutral. You've studied criminal psychology. Community college courses, Maya admits, thinking of the textbooks she'd devoured between double shifts, the lectures she'd attended on 3 hours of sleep. I was working toward a degree in criminal justice before. She trails off, unwilling to explain the financial collapse that had derailed those plans 2 years ago. Before your mother's medical bills consumed everything, Dominic finishes, demonstrating exactly how thoroughly he's researched her background. Reconstructive surgery after her boyfriend's assault, 18 months of physical therapy, your younger brother's tuition at NYU that you've been covering since your father died when you were 12. The casual recitation of her life's hardships should feel invasive. Instead, it confirms what Maya already suspected. Dominic Valentino doesn't operate on half information. If he's going to protect her, he needs to understand every vulnerability, every pressure point that enemies might exploit. The bomber talked, Dominic continues, his tone suggesting the conversation had been unpleasant for everyone involved. Before he died of injuries sustained during apprehension, he identified his employer as working for the Russo family, specifically Marco Russo's nephew, Vincent. Ambitious, reckless, and apparently convinced that eliminating me would create opportunities for territorial expansion. Maya's criminal justice courses hadn't covered the intricacies of New York's organized crime families, but even civilians knew the Russo name. Old money, old power, old grudges that stretched back generations. The kind of family that viewed violence as business and collateral damage as inevitable. Vincent Russo doesn't know about me, Maya says, hoping the statement is true even as logic suggests otherwise. The bomber was focused on you. I was just the waitress who happened to notice. The bomber had backup. Dominic interrupts gently, his whiskey untouched as he leans forward with elbows on his knees. Someone watching from across the street with a camera. Someone who photographed you approaching my table, photographed you passing me the check, photographed the evacuation that followed. Those photos are now in Vincent Russo's possession, along with your name, your address in Queens, your mother's address in Chinatown, and your brother's class schedule at NYU. The words land like physical blows, each one destroying another pillar of the safety Maya had built through careful anonymity. Her hands tighten around the whiskey glass, hard enough that crystal threatens to crack under the pressure. My family, she whispers, the terror she'd been holding at bay finally breaking through her careful control. If they come after my family because of what I did. Your mother and brother were relocated 3 hours ago, Dominic says, his calm absolute despite delivering information that rewrites Maya's entire reality. They're currently in a secure property in White Plains, under 24-hour protection by my best security team. Your mother thinks she won a radio contest for a luxury weekend getaway. Your brother thinks NYU is conducting an emergency dormitory inspection and providing temporary housing. Neither knows the real reason, and neither will, unless absolutely necessary. Maya's breath comes in short gasps as the implications settle over her like concrete. Her family, uprooted. Her life, dismantled. Her choices stripped away by forces she'd invited in the moment her pen touched that receipt paper. How long? She manages, her voice breaking on the question. How long do we hide? How long before Vincent Russo decides I'm not worth the effort? Dominic's expression hardens into something frightening, the civilized veneer cracking to reveal the predator beneath. Vincent Russo will be dead within 72 hours, he states, with the certainty of someone describing weather rather than murder. Along with everyone in his immediate circle who knew about the bombing attempt, the Russo family will disavow his actions, offer reparations, and pray I consider the matter settled. The casual discussion of planned executions should horrify Maya, should send her running despite having nowhere safe to run. Instead, she finds herself cataloging the logic, understanding the brutal mathematics that govern Dominic's world. Threats must be eliminated completely or they metastasize. Half measures create vulnerabilities. Mercy gets interpreted as weakness. And if the Russo family doesn't disavow him? Maya asks, surprising herself with her willingness to engage with this nightmare scenario. If they decide to protect Vincent despite his failure? Then New York experiences a minor war, Dominic answers, his tone suggesting he's already mapped every contingency. One that ends with the Russo family's territorial holdings redistributed among families wise enough to remember why attacking me is considered suicide. The apartment's elegant silence amplifies his words, making them feel more real than they should. Maya drains her whiskey, welcoming the burn that grounds her to something physical, something beyond the abstraction of violence being discussed like a business merger. I need to call my mother, she says, reaching for her phone before Dominic's hand shoots out, stopping her with gentle but immovable pressure. Your phone is compromised, he explains, releasing her wrist but maintaining eye contact. The Russos have resources within telecommunications companies. Every call, every text, every location ping is being monitored. Using it now tells them exactly where you are, who you're with, and how frightened you've become. Maya stares at the device that's been her lifeline for years, suddenly seeing it as the tracking beacon it actually represents. So I just disappear? Let my mother think I've abandoned her? Let my brother wonder why I'm not returning his calls about needing textbook money? You use this, Dominic says, producing a different phone from his pocket. Sleek, black, completely unmarked. Secure line, encrypted, routed through enough proxies that even NSA would struggle to trace it. Your family's temporary phones have the number programmed as emergency contact. They can reach you, you can reach them, and nobody else can intercept the conversation. The phone feels heavier than it should when Maya accepts it, weighted with implications about the life she's being pulled into. Secure communications, compromised devices, families relocated under false pretenses. This is the infrastructure of Dominic's world, and she's now residing within its boundaries whether she chose this or not. I want to see them, Maya says, the request emerging as demand rather than question. Tomorrow, I want to see my mother and brother, want to explain what's happening before they imagine something worse. Dominic considers this. His whiskey finally lifted to his lips as he weighs risks against benefits. Tomorrow afternoon, he agrees, after I've confirmed the Russo family's response to my opening negotiations. The White Plains property is secure enough for a brief visit, supervised by security that won't be visible, but will be comprehensive. The concession feels significant, suggesting Dominic understands that cooperation requires compromise. That protection becomes imprisonment if the protected have no agency, no connection to the people they're being protected for. What happens after 72 hours? Maya asks, needing to understand the timeline of her captivity. After Vincent Russo is dead and his associates are eliminated, do I go back to my studio in Queens, get a new waitressing job, pretend I didn't spend 3 days in your protective custody? Dominic's expression shifts into something Maya can't quite read. Calculation mixed with something that might be concern or might simply be assessment of valuable assets. That depends on several variables, he answers carefully. Whether the Russo family accepts the resolution, whether other families see opportunity in my temporary distraction, whether you prove to be someone worth investing in beyond immediate crisis management. The phrasing catches Maya's attention, the suggestion that she might be more than just collateral damage requiring cleanup. Investing in? She echoes, setting down her empty glass with careful precision. What exactly do you think I have to offer beyond noticing details that save your life? Intelligence, Dominic answers immediately, as if he's already compiled a comprehensive list. Observational skills that most people lack. The ability to remain calm under pressure. A background in criminal psychology that, while incomplete, demonstrates aptitude for understanding behavioral patterns. And most importantly, the courage to act on what you observe rather than rationalizing your way into inaction. Maya laughs, the sound sharp with disbelief. You're offering me a job? Is that what this is? Some kind of criminal recruitment initiative disguised as protective custody? I'm suggesting, Dominic corrects, his tone sharpening slightly, that you possess skills my organization values, skills that are currently being wasted on carrying plates and memorizing wine pairings. The question isn't whether I'd hire you. The question is whether you'd accept employment in an industry that operates outside traditional legal boundaries. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The offer hangs between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Maya thinks of her criminal justice courses, the career she'd imagined working within the system to create change. She thinks of her mother's broken jaw, the boyfriend who'd walked away with probation and a restraining order that meant nothing. She thinks of how many times the system fails people who need it most, how many times looking away becomes policy. What would the job entail? She asks, hating how interested she sounds despite every rational argument against entertaining this conversation. Dominic stands, moving to the windows where Manhattan glitters like a promise or a threat depending on perspective. Initially, analysis. You'd review security footage, behavioral patterns, potential threats that my current analysts might miss. Your outsider perspective combined with academic training creates a unique lens. You see things differently than people who've been in this world too long. He turns from the window, backlit by the city's glow in a way that makes him seem both larger and more isolated. Eventually, if you proved capable and trustworthy, strategic consulting, sitting in on negotiations where reading behavioral tells matters, assessing new business partners for deception indicators, helping me understand motivations of people who think they can lie to someone who's built an empire on information. Maya processes this, her mind racing through implications. You want me to be your human lie detector, your behavioral analyst for criminal enterprise. I want you to be exactly what you already are, Dominic counters, but compensated appropriately and protected comprehensively. Your criminal justice degree, completed. Your mother's medical bills, eliminated. Your brother's education, fully funded. A salary that makes waitressing tips look like pocket change, and the satisfaction of using your skills for something more meaningful than remembering who ordered their steak medium rare. The temptation is enormous, seductive in its promise of financial security and intellectual engagement. Maya could finish her degree, could give her family the stability they'd never known, could stop choosing between rent and groceries, between her education and her brother's, between surviving and actually living. But the cost would be her soul, wouldn't it? Working for a man who orders executions as casually as dinner reservations. Becoming complicit in violence she'd once hoped to prevent through legitimate law enforcement. Crossing lines she'd spent years telling herself were sacred. I need time, Maya says finally, the compromise feeling like cowardice and wisdom simultaneously. Time to think about this without bombs and threats and photographs of my family. Time to understand what I'd actually be agreeing to before I agree to anything. Dominic nods, acceptance in his expression suggesting he'd expected this response. You have until Vincent Russo is dead, and the Russo family's response is clear. 72 hours, give or take. Then we'll revisit this conversation when immediate crisis has passed and you can think beyond survival mode. The reprieve feels generous and manipulative at once. Enough time to convince herself she has agency, not enough time to actually escape the situation she's fallen into. But Maya accepts it because what choice does she have? Her family is already under Dominic's protection. Her apartment is already being watched by people who want her dead. Her life as she knew it is already over. Where do I sleep? She asks, suddenly, exhausted beyond measure as adrenaline finally abandons her completely. Bedroom is yours, Dominic answers, already moving toward the door. I'll be next door in 4B. The apartments connect through the kitchen if you need anything. My security team is stationed in the building's lobby and on the roof. You're safe here, Maya. Safer than anywhere else in the city right now. He pauses at the threshold, hand on the doorknob, his profile sharp against the hallway light. For what it's worth, I'm sorry your life got complicated because you chose to save mine. That's not a debt I take lightly, and it's not one I'll ever consider fully paid. Then he's gone, the door closing with a soft click that sounds thunderous in the apartment's sudden emptiness. Maya sits motionless on the sofa, staring at the secure phone in her hand, at the whiskey glass that still carries the warmth from her fingers, at the Manhattan skyline that represents either prison or possibility, depending on how she chooses to view it. Her old phone buzzes constantly on the coffee table, messages from her mother, her brother, former coworkers wondering if she's okay after the restaurant evacuation. She ignores them all, understanding now that responding means giving away her location, means endangering herself and the family Dominic has already moved to protect. Instead, she picks up the secure phone and finds the number programmed as Mom, Emergency. Her finger hovers over the call button, rehearsing explanations that sound increasingly inadequate. I saved a Mafia boss's life, and now we're hiding from people who want to kill me doesn't exactly inspire maternal confidence. The call connects on the first ring, her mother's voice sharp with worry. Maya? Is this you? What's this number? Why aren't you answering your regular phone? Mom, I'm okay, Maya says, her voice breaking on the reassurance. I'm safe, but something happened at work and I need you and David to stay where you are for a few days. The place you're at, it's not a contest. It's protection. The silence that follows stretches long enough for Maya to hear her mother's breathing change, shift from confusion to the particular kind of fear that mothers carry for their children. Protection from what? Maya Chen, you tell me right now what trouble you've gotten into. Maya closes her eyes, wishing she could spare her mother this knowledge, wishing she could return to yesterday when her biggest problem was aching feet and difficult customers. I witnessed something at the restaurant, something dangerous, and now the people involved think I'm a threat. But I'm being protected, Mom. By someone with resources to keep all of us safe. Who? Her mother demands, her English heavily accented but perfectly clear. Who is protecting you? Is this the police? FBI? You need to come here. Come to where we are. We'll protect you together. I can't, Maya whispers, tears finally breaking through her control. Not yet, but I'll see you. Tomorrow, okay? I'll come to White Plains and explain everything. Just trust me, Mom. Trust that I'm doing what I need to do to keep us all safe. Her mother's response comes in rapid Mandarin, a mixture of prayers and recriminations that Maya has heard in various forms throughout her childhood. But underneath the worry, there's something else. Recognition, perhaps, that Maya has inherited her mother's particular brand of stubborn survival. The instinct that says sometimes you fight instead of flee, even when fighting seems impossible. Tomorrow, her mother finally agrees, switching back to English. You come tomorrow, And you bring whoever this protector is, so I can see his face when he promises to keep my daughter safe. No hiding behind phones and locked doors. Face to face. Maya almost laughs at the image of her 5'2" mother demanding assurances from Dominic Valentino, criminal empire builder and casual murderer. I'll bring him, she promises, wondering if she's just committed Dominic to something he'd rather avoid. I love you, Mom. Tell David I love him too. The call ends with her mother's blessing in Mandarin, words that have protected Maya through every hardship from childhood poverty to her current impossible situation. She sets the secure phone beside her old device, the contrast between them a perfect metaphor for the division in her life. The bedroom, when Maya finally forces herself to stand, is larger than her entire queen studio. The bed is California king, dressed in linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The attached bathroom features a shower with 6 heads and a soaking tub that could accommodate 3 people comfortably. Maya strips off her wrinkled uniform, the black fabric carrying the scent of Vincenzo's kitchen. Garlic, expensive wine, the particular smell of fear that had permeated the evacuation. She stands under the shower's scalding spray until her skin turns pink, until the water washes away everything except the fundamental question she can't escape. Who is Maya Chen now that she's saved a killer and accepted his protection? The woman who stares back from the steam-fogged mirror looks the same. Dark eyes, angular face, the scar above her right eyebrow from her mother's boyfriend's ring before Maya learned to duck fast enough. But something essential has shifted. Some internal compass that pointed toward law enforcement and justice has been knocked askew by reality's complexities. Dominic Valentino orders murders, but he also evacuated 43 innocent people before that bomb could detonate. He operates outside legal boundaries, but he relocated her family to safety without being asked. He's offering her employment in criminal enterprise, but he's also offering her the education and stability she's been chasing since she was 16 years old. The world, Maya is discovering, doesn't divide neatly into good and evil. It exists in gradients of necessity and consequence, exactly as Dominic had said earlier. And she exists somewhere in that gray space now, trying to navigate by moral compasses that no longer point true north. Sleep comes eventually, though Maya keeps the bedside lamp burning like a child afraid of darkness. She dreams of torn receipts and ticking timers, of her mother's broken jaw and her brother's tuition bills, of Dominic's whiskey-colored eyes watching her with an intensity that feels both threatening and somehow protective. She wakes to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of fresh coffee wafting from the kitchen. For a moment, disorientation is total. This isn't her studio, isn't her life, isn't anything she recognizes as belonging to Maya Chen from Queens. Then memory returns in a crushing wave, and she's back in the apartment Dominic Valentino provided, wearing borrowed clothes, living under protection that feels more like house arrest, waiting for Vincent Russo to die so she can reclaim some semblance of normalcy. The coffee is expensive, Italian, probably costs more per pound than Maya used to spend on groceries for a week. She pours herself a cup and finds pastries on the counter, still warm from whatever bakery delivers breakfast to people who live like this. A note beside the food reads, "Security briefing at 10 a.m. Car to White Plains leaves at 2 p.m. Eat something?" Maya checks the secure phone. 9:15. 45 minutes until she learns exactly what Dominic's opening negotiations with the Russo family entailed. 45 minutes to convince herself she can handle whatever violence he's orchestrated on her behalf. She forces herself to eat a croissant that tastes like butter and regret, washes it down with coffee that's too good for someone whose conscience is currently staging a full-scale revolt. The Manhattan skyline stretches endlessly beyond the windows, millions of people living ordinary lives, while Maya Chen exists in this parallel universe where bombs and bodyguards are Friday afternoon occurrences. At exactly 10 o'clock, a knock sounds at the door, Not Dominic, but a woman in her mid-30s with sharp eyes and sharper posture that screams military background. She's dressed in tactical casual, jeans and a fitted jacket that doesn't quite hide the weapon at her hip. Ms. Chen, I'm Rebecca Torres, head of Mr. Valentino's personal security team. She introduces herself with professional courtesy that doesn't invite familiarity. I'm here to brief you on current threat assessment and security protocols for today's travel. Maya steps aside, allowing Rebecca into the apartment with the strange feeling that she's welcoming a warden rather than a guest. Rebecca moves directly to the coffee table, spreading out what appears to be surveillance photos and tactical maps with the efficiency of someone who's done this 1,000 times. Vincent Russo was located at approximately 0300 hours this morning at his girlfriend's apartment in Soho. Rebecca begins, her tone clinical despite discussing what Maya suspects ended very badly for Vincent Russo. He's currently in our custody at a secure location, undergoing questioning about his co-conspirators and the chain of command that authorized yesterday's bombing attempt. The careful phrasing, in our custody, undergoing questioning, does nothing to disguise the reality that Vincent Russo is being tortured for information. Maya's stomach turns even as her mind catalogues this as necessary, as the logical response to attempted mass murder. The Russo family was contacted at 0600 with photographic evidence of Vincent's capture and a list of demands for his safe return. Rebecca continues, tapping one of the surveillance photos that shows a man, presumably Vincent, bound to a chair in a room that could be anywhere. Their response is due by noon today. Mr. Valentino is currently attending to other business but will join us for the White Plains visit. Maya studies the photos, seeing not just Vincent's capture but the careful documentation of it. Multiple angles, clear evidence of identity, the kind of proof that leaves no room for the Russo family to claim mistaken identity or negotiate from false assumptions. What happens if they refuse his demands? Maya asks, already suspecting the answer but needing to hear it stated clearly. Rebecca's expression doesn't change, her professionalism absolute. Then Vincent Russo dies, his body is returned to his family in pieces, and Mr. Valentino initiates Phase 2 of territorial negotiations. But that outcome is unlikely. The Russo family understands basic mathematics. One nephew isn't worth a war they'd lose. The casual certainty of it, the cold calculation of lives and territories, should horrify Maya more than it does. Instead, she finds herself understanding the brutal logic, recognizing this as the language Dominic's world speaks: violence as negotiation, death as consequence, protection purchased through the credible threat of retaliation. And my family? Maya asks, steering the conversation back to the people who matter most. The security at White Plains. Is it sufficient if the Russos decide I'm a target worth pursuing despite the risks? The White Plains property has 6 armed security personnel, rotating shifts, plus perimeter sensors and panic room capabilities. Rebecca answers, her confidence absolute. Your mother and brother believe they're staying at a luxury bed and breakfast. They're being monitored for any signs of duress or unusual behavior, but so far, they're treating this as a pleasant vacation. The image of her mother, who'd spent 30 years cleaning houses and taking in sewing, treating a luxury property as vacation creates a pang in Maya's chest. Her family has never known this kind of wealth, this kind of security, and it's only available now because Maya saved the life of a man who traffics in violence. Mr. Valentino will arrive at 13:30 to accompany you to White Plains, Rebecca concludes, gathering her materials with practiced efficiency. Until then, you're free to move within the apartment, but please don't approach windows or attempt to leave the building. The Russos' response isn't due for another 2 hours, and until we know their position, we maintain maximum caution. Maya nods, understanding that she's essentially under house arrest, despite the gilded cage surrounding her. Rebecca leaves with the same professional courtesy she'd entered with, And Maya is alone again, with expensive coffee and questions that multiply faster than answers. She spends the next 3 hours reading news on the secure phone, searching for any coverage of yesterday's evacuation. There's nothing. No reports of bombs or threats, just a brief mention of a gas leak at a midtown restaurant causing temporary closure. The official story, sanitized and boring, hiding the reality underneath. At 1:30 exactly, Dominic arrives wearing different clothes than last night. Charcoal suit, blue tie, the armor of legitimacy that disguises what he actually is. He looks rested despite the fact that Maya knows he spent the night orchestrating kidnapping and torture, negotiating with criminal families, managing violence with spreadsheet efficiency. The Russo family accepted my terms, he announces without preamble, his expression revealing nothing about how he feels regarding this outcome. Vincent will be returned alive, minus 2 fingers as penalty for the bombing attempt. The family will pay reparations, acknowledge their error publicly within organization circles, and Vincent will be exiled to their Sicily operations, where his incompetence can't threaten New York interests. Maya processes this, the casual discussion of mutilation and exile creating cognitive dissonance with the man standing in expensive tailoring, looking more like a corporate executive than a crime lord. And if he comes back? If he decides revenge is worth defying his family? Then he dies, and the Russo family accepts that consequence. Dominic answers simply. Those were the terms. They chose survival over pride, which was the intelligent decision. The drive to White Plains takes 40 minutes. Dominic's Mercedes navigating through late afternoon traffic, while Rebecca rides in a follow vehicle that maintains careful distance. Dominic spends most of the drive on calls conducted in Italian, his tone varying from cordial to coldly threatening depending on who's on the other end. Maya watches the city give way to suburbs, then to the affluent neighborhoods where people live in actual houses with actual yards, concepts that feel alien to someone who's spent her entire life in cramped apartments. The White Plains property, when they finally arrive, looks like something from architectural magazines. Modern design, glass and stone, sprawling across landscaped grounds that probably cost more to maintain than Maya's annual salary. Her mother stands on the front porch, arms crossed, face set in the particular expression that had terrified Maya's childhood. Beside her, David looks confused and worried, his NYU sweatshirt too thin for the November chill. "Mom," Maya says, climbing out of the Mercedes before it's fully stopped. She closes the distance between them in seconds, folding into her mother's embrace with relief that threatens to undo her completely. "Who is this man?" her mother demands in Mandarin, pulling back to study Dominic as he approaches with Rebecca maintaining professional distance. "Who is he that he puts my family in mansions and my daughter in danger?" Maya switches to English, needing Dominic to understand this conversation, needing him to see the woman whose safety he's now responsible for. "Mom, this is Dominic Valentino. He's the man I saved yesterday, and he's protecting us from the people who want to kill him for surviving." Her mother's gaze sharpens, studying Dominic with the precision of someone who's spent decades reading people for survival. "You bring danger to my daughter," she says in accented but clear English. "You put a target on her back because she has a good heart." "Yes," Dominic agrees, his honesty stark and refreshing. "But I didn't ask for her intervention, and I can't undo what's already been done. I can only ensure that her good heart doesn't get her killed for acting on compassion." Maya's mother continues her assessment, her silence more intimidating than any words. Finally, she nods. Not acceptance exactly, but acknowledgement of reality's constraints. "You keep my children safe," she says, the words somewhere between request and command. "Both of them. Or I will find you myself, rich man with guns. A mother's curse is stronger than bullets." Something like respect crosses Dominic's features, his expression softening fractionally. "I believe you," he says simply, And I give you my word, your family's safety is now my responsibility. That's not a debt I take lightly. David, who's been silent throughout this exchange, finally finds his voice. Maya, what the hell is going on? They told me NYU was doing dorm inspections, but then I see you arriving in a car that costs more than 4 years of tuition with some guy who looks like he runs the world. Are you in trouble? Did you do something illegal? Maya looks at her little brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. Not the child she'd raised after their father died, but a man at 21, smart enough to attend NYU on partial scholarship, observant enough to know when he's being lied to. I did something stupid, Maya admits, the truth feeling necessary even though it's terrifying to speak aloud. I got involved in something dangerous because I couldn't look away when someone needed help, and now we're all dealing with the consequences until the danger passes. How long? David asks, his voice cracking slightly on the question. How long do we hide here pretending this is vacation while you're out there with armed bodyguards? 72 hours, Dominic answers before Maya can formulate a response. Maybe less, depending on how certain negotiations conclude. Then your sister can return to her life, and you can return to yours, with the understanding that some people are now aware of your existence and importance to her. The weight of that statement, importance to her, settles over the porch like fog. Maya's family has become leverage, pieces on a chessboard she never asked to play on. And Dominic has made them his responsibility not out of altruism, but out of debt and strategic necessity. They spend the next hour inside the property, Maya's mother insisting everyone eat despite the situation's tension. The kitchen is stocked with enough food to feed 20 people, and Maya suspects Dominic had someone research her family's preferences because there's her mother's favorite tea, her brother's preferred snacks, comfort foods from her childhood appearing like magic. Dominic maintains polite distance during the meal, answering her mother's questions with careful honesty that never quite reveals the full extent of his criminal enterprise. He's a businessman, he explains, real estate and investments, though some of his business interests occasionally attract unwanted attention from competitors. Maya watches him navigate her mother's interrogation with the same skill he probably uses in actual business negotiations, truthful enough to build trust, vague enough to avoid specifics that would terrify. Her mother doesn't believe him entirely, but she accepts his answers because what choice does she have? When it's time to leave, Maya's mother pulls her aside, gripping both her hands with strength that belies her small frame. This man, she says in Mandarin, making sure Dominic can't understand. He is dangerous. But he looks at you like you matter, not like property. That's rare in men with power. Be careful, Maya. Be smart. But don't throw away opportunity because you're afraid of cost. The advice surprises Maya, her mother's pragmatism cutting through moral absolutism. Survival, her mother has always taught her, sometimes requires compromise. Sometimes requires accepting help from questionable sources. Sometimes requires acknowledging that the world doesn't divide neatly into heroes and villains. The drive back to Brooklyn is quieter, Dominic respecting Maya's need for silence as she processes the visit. Her family is safe, comfortable, temporarily removed from the danger her intervention created. But they're also prisoners in a gilded cage, their freedom contingent on Dominic's continued protection and the Russo family's continued compliance. Your mother is formidable, Dominic observes as Manhattan's skyline comes into view. I understand now where you get your courage. Maya almost laughs, the sound catching in her throat. My mother survived domestic violence, poverty, immigration, and raising 2 kids alone in a country whose language she barely spoke. Courage isn't optional when survival is constant. No, Dominic agrees, his tone thoughtful. It's not. Which is why most people fold under pressure rather than act. You chose to act yesterday despite every rational argument for looking away. That's not just courage, that's character. The compliment lands strangely, coming from a man who orders torture and mutilation as business strategy, but Maya finds herself accepting it anyway, recognizing that Dominic's world operates on different metrics than the one she'd inhabited until yesterday. In his world, action matters more than intentions. Results matter more than methods. Survival matters more than morality. Back at the apartment, Dominic lingers at the door rather than immediately retreating to 4B. Tomorrow is the final deadline, he says, his expression unreadable. Vincent Russo returns to his family. They pay reparations and acknowledge fault publicly, and I confirm whether any other families are considering similar actions while they perceive me as distracted. And if they are? Maya asks, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it stated plainly. Then tomorrow becomes significantly more complicated, Dominic replies. But that's my problem to manage, not yours. Your problem is deciding what happens after the 72 hours expire. Whether you return to Queens and waitressing, or whether you accept that your life has already changed in ways that make going backward impossible. He's right, Maya realizes with crystalline clarity. She can't know what she now knows about Dominic's world. Can't unsee the violence and complexity operating beneath New York's civilized surface. Can't pretend she's just a waitress who happened to notice a bomber and made a split-second decision to intervene. She's complicit now, whether she accepts his job offer or not. Complicit in the torture of Vincent Russo. Complicit in whatever negotiations Dominic conducts to secure her family's safety. Complicit in the fundamental bargain she made when she wrote "bomb" on that receipt. I'll have an answer tomorrow, Maya says, the commitment forming even as she speaks it. After I've had time to think about who I am now versus who I was yesterday. After I understand what I'm actually willing to become. Dominic nods, acceptance in his expression. Fair enough. Sleep well, Maya. Tomorrow decides everything. Then he's gone, and Maya is alone with expensive coffee, secure phones, and the Manhattan skyline that represents either prison or possibility, depending on choices she hasn't quite made yet. She doesn't sleep well despite Dominic's wishes. She lies awake cataloging decisions and consequences, weighing her soul against her family's security, trying to find the line between compromise and corruption. Somewhere around 3 a.m., Maya realizes there isn't a line. There's only the gradient Dominic described, necessity and consequence existing on a spectrum that has no clear boundaries, no moment where good definitively becomes evil. She saved 43 lives yesterday by warning Dominic. That's good. Unambiguously good. The kind of action her criminal justice professors would call heroic. But that good action has led to torture, mutilation, and her family being held in protective custody by a man who orders murders. Does the good cancel out the bad? Do the 43 lives saved justify Vincent Russo's missing fingers? Does protecting her family excuse her participation in Dominic's world? Maya doesn't have answers. She only has daylight approaching and a decision deadline that's racing toward her with the inevitability of a train she can't stop. Tomorrow decides everything, Dominic had said, and Maya Chen, formerly a waitress, currently a woman who saved a killer and accepted his protection, will have to decide who she's willing to become. Maya Chen wakes to gunfire in Dominic Valentino's Brooklyn apartment building. It's not the Russo family seeking revenge as expected, but a coordinated assault by Luca Castellano, a rival using the Russo situation as cover for his own ambitions. Dominic calls immediately, instructing Maya to barricade herself in the bedroom and wait for him. He'll identify himself using her mother's full name, Li Mei Chen, before she opens the door. Through the window, Maya watches the battle unfold below. 3 black SUVs block the street, men in tactical gear engaging Dominic's security team. She sees Dominic emerge from the building, his white shirt bloodstained, providing cover fire for Rebecca Torres as she drags an injured teammate to safety. Maya's criminal psychology training kicks in, analyzing the tactical situation. 8 attackers versus 4 defenders, but Dominic's team has defensive advantage. This isn't random violence. It's a carefully planned assault by professionals who've studied the building's security. The chilling realization hits. There's a traitor in Dominic's organization feeding information to enemies. Maya's secure phone rings, an unknown number that shouldn't be able to reach her. She answers to hear Luca Castellano himself. He knows everything. Her name, her situation, her significance to Dominic. He offers a deal. Open her bedroom door in 5 minutes, accept escort out of the building, receive $500,000 compensation, and walk away while Dominic dies. If she refuses, his man will breach the door in 6 minutes anyway, and she'll die as collateral damage. The call ends, leaving Maya with no real choice. She can't betray the man who protected her family, but she also can't hide while he dies defending her. Her eyes fall on the bedroom safe, unlocked, because why secure a safe in a supposedly secure apartment? Inside, weapons, ammunition, tactical body armor sized for Dominic but potentially usable. Maya has never shot anyone, never imagined herself capable of taking a life. But academic understanding of violence has become visceral reality. She loads a Glock 9mm, straps on the body armor, and makes her decision. She's not hiding anymore. Moving through the connecting door to apartment 4B, Dominic's actual space, Maya discovers his war room and weapons cache. She gathers grenades for psychological warfare, clips a tactical radio to her armor, and positions herself to ambush whoever comes through the door. The radio crackles with Rebecca's voice reporting 4th floor compromise. Maya keys in, identifying herself and revealing Luca's trap. The hostile is coming for her to draw Dominic out of defensive position. Dominic orders her to retreat and barricade, but Maya refuses. "I'm not hiding while you die protecting me." The door explodes inward. Maya fires 3 times, center mass. The man drops, his body armor absorbing 2 shots but the third finding the gap at his collarbone. He's not dead, gasping wetly, reaching for his weapon. Maya kicks it away and demands information. When he laughs and promises they're all dead anyway, she pulls the trigger again. Execution, cold-blooded and necessary. Maya Chen, waitress, student, daughter, becomes someone else entirely, someone capable of killing to protect what matters. She keys the radio again, reporting 1 hostile down and asking the crucial question: can Dominic win this fight, or do they need to evacuate? Dominic makes a decision that changes everything. He gives Maya access to the tactical channel. Rebecca grants her security feed access, making Maya their eyes while they engage in direct combat. From multiple camera angles, Maya counts 8 remaining hostiles and begins calling out movements. But her criminal psychology training reveals something critical. The rooftop team isn't breaching. They're providing suppressing fire as diversion. The real assault is coming through the parking garage. She's right, Dominic confirms, immediately adapting strategy. They collapse position to the lobby, creating a kill zone that the garage hostiles walk directly into. Maya continues coordinating, calling precise positions, helping Dominic's outnumbered team systematically eliminate attackers. Within minutes, 6 hostiles are down. The remaining 3 retreat when they realize they've lost. Then silence, the loaded quiet that follows violence. Dominic enters 4B to find Maya sitting amid weapons caches and security feeds, a corpse on his floor showing her 3-shot pattern and execution round. He identifies himself using her mother's full name as promised. "You can put the gun down now. It's over." When Maya's hands finally release the Glock, they shake violently. Dominic pulls her into an embrace that acknowledges what they've become. 2 people who've survived violence together, who've crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. "You killed for me," Dominic says, his tone between accusation and wonder. "I killed to survive," Maya corrects. I made myself complicit the moment I wrote bomb on that receipt. Tonight just made it official. He reveals that Luca Castellano had called offering her extraction and $500,000 to let him die. Why didn't you? Maya explains her mother's teaching about debts that transcend transaction. Dominic protected her family with respect when he could have eliminated the liability. That's not something she walks away from for money. It's not debt anymore, Dominic says. That's partnership, Maya. That's the foundation of trust in a world where trust usually gets people killed. Rebecca reports the building secure. 6 hostiles eliminated, 2 captured. They've identified the traitor, Dominic's communications director, feeding information to Castellano for 3 months. Rebecca handled him personally during the firefight. Maya pieces together the larger strategy. The Russo bombing wasn't just assassination, it was reconnaissance. A test of Dominic's response protocols to identify vulnerabilities. Vincent Russo was a useful idiot, manipulated by Castellano's people. The goal was never to kill Dominic on the train, but to study his security and position assets for the real assault. Her analytical mind impresses both Dominic and Rebecca. This is why he wants her as partner rather than employee. She understands the strategic landscape faster than people who've lived in this world for years. Dominic insists Maya call her mother before she hears about gang violence in Brooklyn through other channels. Her mother answers immediately, maternal instinct warning her something was wrong. "I'm safe, Mom," Maya says, her voice cracking. "There was an incident, but it's handled now." Then the confession tears loose. "I killed someone tonight, shot him 3 times and executed him while he was bleeding out. I'm not the person you raised anymore." Her mother's response surprises her. Speaking in Mandarin about tigers and the women who learn to ride them, she says Maya has crossed into Dominic's world not as victim, but as someone who belongs there. "You're the woman who saves lives and takes them when necessary. This world you've entered is dangerous, but running from it now would be more dangerous than staying." The permission settles over Maya like benediction. Her mother offers pragmatic acceptance, inviting them both for lunch tomorrow. Violence is easier to process over good food and tea. Over whiskey, Maya makes her choice formal. "I want the job. Not just employment, I want the partnership you mentioned. Voice in decisions, stake in outcomes, genuine collaboration." Dominic warns that partnership requires trust that takes years to build. He's offering the foundation, but the full structure takes time. Maya accepts this, then addresses the harder question: "And when I order someone killed? When the reality of my empire becomes impossible to ignore?" Maya thinks about the man she executed, about Vincent Russo's fate, about casual efficiency of violence. "Then I'll tell you if I think you're wrong. I'll argue for alternatives, but I won't leave or betray you for making decisions I don't agree with." That's the difference between partnership and employment. Partners can disagree without dissolving the relationship. Dominic extends his hand formally. "Partners, then." They shake on it, sealing the agreement. He invites her to dinner at his actual home, his West Village townhouse, to meet his inner circle and see the full scope of operations. "Tomorrow night you show me everything, and I decide if I can live with the full reality." The lunch in White Plains with Maya's family proves surprisingly normal. Her mother interrogates Dominic about his intentions and Maya's safety. David notices his sister has changed, aged a year in 3 days, grown harder. But the family accepts the transformation, understanding that survival sometimes requires becoming someone new. Her mother demands weekly visits and announces they'll eventually return to Chinatown, though she accepts Dominic's offer of security improvements as gift between partners' families, rather than debt-creating transaction. That evening's dinner at Dominic's townhouse introduces Maya to his complete inner circle. Cole, Rebecca Torres, Marcus Chen, Sophia Castellano, plus lawyers, accountants, and logistics coordinators. They evaluate Maya thoroughly, testing whether she'll fold under scrutiny. She handles it calmly, establishing herself as someone with actual skills, criminal psychology training, and demonstrated courage, rather than just lucky civilian. By dessert, hostile evaluation has shifted to cautious acceptance. The business discussion reveals sophisticated strategy. They're letting Luca Castellano's organization collapse internally while applying external pressure. His lies about eliminating Dominic's inner circle will expose him to his own people, who'll realize he failed. Sharks always eat their own when blood's in the water. In Dominic's study afterward, over brandy, they discuss what happens next. Maya will finish her degree properly funded, develop her strategic analysis skills, become indispensable while maintaining enough separation to avoid easy targeting. Dominic also addresses the attraction between them. Somewhere in that process, we figure out what this is. This thing that started with torn receipt and has evolved into something I don't have words for yet. Maya acknowledges it but asks for time. Time to adjust to this new life before adding relationship complexity. Time to understand who I'm becoming before committing to someone else. Dominic accepts this with respect, admitting his own uncertainty about whether this is genuine compatibility or trauma bonding. The vulnerability in his admission, revealing loneliness beneath his controlled exterior, makes Maya trust him more. She thanks him for treating her like partner instead of problem, for seeing potential instead of liability. The moment stretches between them, charged but unresolved, both recognizing they're not ready yet for what might eventually develop. Maya returns to the Brooklyn apartment, responding to her mother's messages about ordinary family concerns that feel surreal against her new reality. She's bonded to Dominic now, through violence and protection, partnership and growing attraction, through choices that can't be unmade. For the first time since writing bomb on a receipt, she sleeps without nightmares. Instead, she dreams of possibilities, degrees completed, family secured, purpose found in unexpected places. Dreams that taste like expensive brandy and smell like gunpowder. Morning brings Dominic's message. Ready for your first official day? Welcome to the family. Maya responds. Ready. Let's build something worth the cost. Her first official day involves learning everything, the complete scope of Dominic's empire, legitimate and criminal operations carefully balanced to provide profit while managing risk. For hours they review files and strategies, Maya asking questions, challenging assumptions, suggesting alternatives based on behavioral psychology. You're natural at this, Dominic observes. The way you see patterns, connect pieces, identify vulnerabilities we'd missed. They spend the evening talking beyond business, childhoods, dreams, frustrations with failing systems. Maya discovers Dominic reads philosophy, collects art, speaks 4 languages. He discovers she writes poetry, paints, dreams of teaching criminal psychology someday, despite the irony. By evening's end, something has shifted between them. Not love, too soon for that, but genuine connection, recognition of compatible minds and complementary skills, attraction transcending physical chemistry to include intellectual respect. Dominic announces tomorrow begins tactical training, self-defense, weapons proficiency, situational awareness. You've proven you can handle crisis, but proper training makes you significantly more effective and significantly more dangerous. Maya accepts this as part of her transformation from civilian to whatever she's becoming. She's already dangerous because she thinks clearly under pressure. Training just makes her dangerous in additional ways. She dreams that night of partnership and possibility, of her mother's approval and brother's safety, of purpose found in unexpected places. Dominic appears in those dreams not as criminal or protector, but as equal, partner, maybe eventually something more. The future stretches ahead uncertain and dangerous, full of challenges she never imagined facing. But it's her future, chosen consciously rather than stumbled into, built on honest foundation rather than illusion. Maya Chen has found her place in Dominic Valentino's world, not as victim or passenger, but as partner, strategist, woman who saw clearly and stayed anyway. 3 days ago, she was a waitress serving expensive pasta. Today, she's a criminal enterprise partner, strategist, and maybe eventually something more to the man who offered her purpose when she'd been merely surviving rather than truly living. The transformation should terrify her. Instead, it feels like finally becoming who she was always meant to be, once circumstance forced her to acknowledge capabilities she'd been taught to suppress.